Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today I'm down in Thomasville, Georgia, and we've gone on a little road trip today and having a little fun. Got behind us here a little Frick steam traction engine that we're going to play around with today, and I'm going to let this gentleman here tell you about it. So tell us who you are and where you're from and what we're doing.
Well, my name is Greg Lang, and I live in Coolidge, Georgia, actually, just outside of Thomasville. And this is my new 1914 Frick 16 horsepower traction engine. And I bought this engine from David Jowett from Odessa, Missouri, and it's in fine shape. It's manufactured by the Frick company, and they called it an Eclipse. It's an East Coast engine, so it was primarily used on the east side of the Mississippi River. A lot of sawmills would run this engine. Not so much plowing as they would in the Midwest, but threshing and sawmills. So it's got a new boiler. The Jowetts are actually in the business of refurbishing these machines, and this has got a boiler that was built by Jonas Stutzman in Ohio. So it's rated at 175 psi. It's a modern boiler made to look like an antique boiler. So from a safety standpoint, there's really no doubt that this boiler is safe.
Yep.
And we're firing it today on wood. Back in the day, you could burn it, you could run it with straw or coal or wood, but down south, primarily, we would fire it on wood. We just don't have the coal available.
That's right, yeah.
What else do you want to know?
Well, that's a good introduction. It's interesting, you know, we've got two boilers out at our museum that were built by Jonas Stutzman. He is an Amish boiler maker up in the Ohio area and is kind of the go-to guy for reproduction boilers, for traction engines and antique steam and stuff like that. He's one of the few people out there that are really doing them period correct, but at the same time be a modern ASME approved, stamped, everything safe on it boiler. So
yeah, if this was not a new boiler, the state of Georgia would limit us to 100 psi, and really these machines operate better with a higher pressure. The steam is drier, so it's a lot easier on the actual engine itself. This boiler, even though it's modern, it was built to look old. So you see the rivets, all these rivets.
They're all fake.
Those are fake rivets. And they're simply there to make it look like it did in 1914 when it was originally manufactured.
And the boiler is built exactly like the original boiler was built back in the day, other than it's a welded boiler and not a riveted boiler.
So it's very, very safe. Now the engine itself, it's 16 horsepower. It's got one cylinder and one piston. And so that piston is 8.5 inches in diameter, and the stroke on the engine is 10 inches. So, of course, the difference with steam compared to a combustion engine is that it drives both ways. So there's no wasted stroke.
The steam pushes on the piston on both sides of the stroke.
That's right. And so anyway, apparently the horses were a lot bigger in 1914.
I'll agree with you on that.
Because a 16 horsepower tractor traction engine will probably outpull many of the modern tractors that are higher horsepower.
Very true. Well, we're getting this thing under steam right now. It had about 40 pounds on it when about the time we started this video. It's probably up a little bit, but we're going to get some shots of us out here playing with this today. This is the first time you fired it?
It's the first time that I've fired it. We've been waiting for the right weather, and we had it, and then day before yesterday we got 7 inches of rain at this farm. So we're hoping that as we drive it around,
we don't sink down.
We don't sink. But yeah, we're real excited to get it rolling.
Yep, I'm excited to be here.
All right.
Well, good. We're gonna get you guys some video of it running and take you along for the ride. We thought we'd just do a quick walk around here, take a quick look at this engine. This is the actual steam engine up here. The light's not the greatest in the world, but you can kind of see it. So what'd you say the horsepower? 17 horsepower?
16 horsepower.
16 horsepower.
Yep, with an 8.5-inch diameter piston. And
so the flywheel's on the other side. On this side, you have the eccentric,
yep,
which drives this valve right here. This goes up into the steam chest. There's a slide valve in there, and that's what puts the steam either to the front side of the piston or the back side of the piston or the cylinder, and drives that piston in both directions. It also has an exhaust port in there. This is the exhaust pipe coming out right here. And if you notice, the exhaust goes up to the front of the boiler. This is just like in a locomotive. And inside this front area, actually the front of the boiler kind of ends about right in here. The tubes come through. This is just called a smoke box. The smoke comes up the chimney, but the exhaust steam will shoot up that smokestack, and that creates a draft on the fire, makes the fire burn hotter, and makes your engine work better, makes the boiler work better.
The engine doesn't have any oil in it like a modern engine, so you inject oil. That's the oil injector up there, and as the engine is running, it meters out the correct amount of oil and injects it straight into the main steam feed to the engine itself, and that's what lubricates that piston.
And this is a mechanical lubricator, so it's actually got a little rod on there that will go back and forth, and as the engine's running, it'll just crank it out, and like he says, it'll go in and it'll inject it into the steam. So you have the oil and the steam mixed together, and that's what lubricates the oil in your cylinder.
Correct.
So this is the other side of the engine. Of course, we got the big flywheel here, and you could put a belt on that, a flat belt, and then run that up to, if you were powering a thresher or a sawmill or whatever. So this thing was really kind of not only like a tractor for being able to pull a load, but down here in the South, they were probably used more to actually as an engine to power something else. So they would drive this where they needed to go, park it, and then they could run that engine up there, and that became the power source for whatever they were operating. But you also had the ability with this particular one, it wasn't just a portable engine. Some of them had wheels on them, but you would use mules to pull them around to set them up. This one, you could actually drive it like a tractor, and you could hook an implement to it and pull something behind it like you would a modern tractor.
Yeah, and this particular brand, Frick, was real proud of the fact that you could run a belt forward or to the rear. So depending on exactly what kind of work you were doing with the engine, you could do it either way. Most other brands were belted to a thresher or a mill in front of the engine. The difference between this 8.5 and an 8 has to do with and I'm not really 100% positive, but you can actually tighten by moving the engine back. You can put tension on your belt without having to disconnect and do all that. You could leave yourself belted up to your equipment and still be able to move the engine to do what you needed to do.
Of course, you got the area here, you got the firebox down here at the bottom. This is where you put your wood in, or coal, or whatever you're running, and we got a fire built in there right now. I guess you would be able to, if you're using coal or something, you would usually have a coal bin that you carried around. If you look down here, up under the bottom, they got a area there where you can carry some wood with you out there while you're running it. Over here on the side, we got this tank, and that's a water tank.
Yeah, it's pretty neat the way they engineered this thing. You've got, I want to say on this engine, it's over 100 gallons. I can't remember if it's 110 or 130 gallons, but the axle actually goes right through the tank. And then there's a grease fitting there that you can see that maintains lubrication on the axle bearing that goes down through the tank and penetrates into the bearing.
See it here, yeah. You kind of see the axle going through the tank, and there's the oil cup on top that lubricates the bearing.
Yeah, so it's, you have to be able to put water in, and once you build up steam, you're trying to push water into a tank that's got 100, 150 psi on it. And the way this tractor does it is with these injectors. And it's an interesting device. Uses, I guess, a Venturi effect.
That's correct.
And you open the valve to your tank, and then you open your steam, and the steam rushes through there and creates that Venturi and pulls the water up. And at the same time, it's sort of preheating it with the steam.
Right. So the steam comes in the top. Your fresh water comes in the side here. This is going to the
boiler.
To the boiler. Then you have an exhaust down here. So if you have any that blows by, it just drops out that tube. And again, it uses the pressure, the steam pressure in the boiler. I like to explain it. If you're ever taking your thumb and put over the end of a fire hose or a garden hose, and you create a higher pressure by restricting it down. So there's a nozzle in there that restricts that steam down. And right about the time it goes through there, the fresh water comes in, so it picks up some velocity, and you're basically creating a slightly higher pressure, and you're able to take that fresh water and push it into the boiler that has pressure on it.
Yes, it's a pretty neat device. And you know, some engines will have a steam-powered pump, but all engines should have two methods. So we've got two injectors.
Right.
If one of them fails to operate, you can use your secondary.
You see the second one on the right there. Keeping water level in your boiler is absolutely the most critical part of running a steam engine. If you let the water get down below the crown sheet in the top of that boiler, if you look in here in the firebox right above that, there's a sheet of metal that goes around, and there's water completely surrounding that. And if the water level gets below the top of that crown sheet, it can get super hot, and then whenever you put fresh water back in there, it can cause that metal to shrink and cause a boiler explosion, or even just getting it red hot with the pressure behind it can cause an explosion as well. So
yeah, you can do a lot of damage to it if you don't pay attention.
And to yourself.
And to yourself.
Now up top we got a bunch of controls on here. One of them is going to be your throttle, which just opens a throttle valve that puts more and more steam to the engine. This one's going to have a reversing gear in it as well.
It does.
Which moves the valves around and allows you to move in either forward or reverse. And what else you got up there?
You got a big clutch handle.
Okay,
that engages the flywheel. And then there's a couple of hand wheels up there, and one of them is for the draft inducer that we talked about earlier, shooting a little bit of steam up the stack to increase the airflow. And then the other one increases the speed of the machine by adjusting the amount to the governor, which is, I don't know if we mentioned the governor. This is the governor, a flyball governor up there. And it maintains the position of that valve stem based on the revolutions that you want it to turn. And if for any reason the steam pressure drops, and it'll open that valve up to allow more steam to come in, thus maintaining a constant RPM on your engine.
Right. So basically it uses centrifugal force
That's
to
correct.
throw those balls out, and as it does that, the top of that is going to come down, and that goes to a needle valve inside that governor and opens and closes a valve in there, which keeps the engine running at a constant RPM.
Yes.
Well, they've got about 100 pounds of pressure on this thing, and getting ready to try to start it up there. He's opening up the throttle a little bit. All right, okay, he's draining his cylinders now. There's drain cocks on here. You got to get all the condensed water out of those cylinders before you start them up, because water does not compress, steam does. And if those cylinders are full of water and you run that piston forward, it can actually blow the ends of the engine out. So first thing you always do when you're starting the engine is make sure you drain any water out of the cylinders. So that's what he's doing right now. That sound you're hearing there, he's got a little bit of steam blowing up that smokestack. That just keeps a little draft on the fire. we going?
Let's go for a ride, Keith.
Put this thing in gear. Let's see. Start our engine up. Come on. Close our pet cots there. RPMs on it. Now we're going to engage the clutch. Well, I stalled her out. Try it now. This thing does not have power steering. You got to really crank it to get the wheels to turn. A lot of slop in it. Well guys, it has been a very enjoyable day out here today, playing around with this old Frick steam engine, traction engine. I have absolutely had a ball. I want to thank our host for letting us come out and play around on this. I've gotten to taking it around for a couple of spins myself, and anyway, lots of fun. I've been working and playing around steam since 1989, and this is actually the first time I've ever had a chance to drive a traction engine. I've driven just about anything else steam out there, but just never have had the opportunity before until today, and it's been a lot of fun. But anyway guys, that will be a wrap as always. Thanks for watching the channel. Please subscribe to me if you haven't already. Thumbs up and comments are appreciated. Hit that like button to get notifications when new videos come out. And we'll catch you on the next video. Again, thanks for watching.